a little girl, and adults will ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would say a lawyer, I would say a doctor, I would say a teacher, or whatever it is that I fancied at that time. But one thing that never changed was that I wanted to live a life of impact. And I would like to think that I'm doing so right now. And people often ask me, so how do you do it? I think we'll start with first. First is leveraging on the painful process of introspection. When I was a law student in Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, in Congo, if you're from Congo here, say hi. Thank you, my people. So there's a big billboard that I would often pass, and on it was a quote from Socrates, and it says, know thyself. And I would often think about what that quote is and what it really means, knowing thyself. And it's such a painful process because it is sitting down with yourself, knowing everything that you are and accepting it, knowing that you cannot run away. And the day that I think I really sat down to know myself was one day I sat down in my room and there was nobody there. It was just me and myself. And I was having to think about everything that I am and everything that I think that I should be. And it got me thinking about so many things that I thought I was, but I wasn't, you know. And I think approaching life from a place of deep introspection is just the best way to go. There's a proverb that says, when you point a finger, 4 fingers are pointing back at you. I think sometimes you should take that finger that you're pointing at others and also point it back so that 5 fingers should point back at you. And why am I talking about the painful process of introspection? Because you really cannot go anywhere without knowing yourself. So what have I learned about myself? That I'm a very impulsive person. In fact, there's a running joke in my family that I am known with speed. And because I know that I'm a very impulsive person, I have done what I call the stakeholders of my life. So I have found experts in different fields that I think are, experts in their own right. So when it comes to the areas of my finance, I have a few people that I think, well, these people have done well. When it comes to area of, relationship, business, even my nonprofit. And whenever I want to make a decision, I run it by these people that I consider are the stakeholders of my life in that area. And having the ability to do that came from that painful process of really, really knowing myself. Secondly, the second way to do it is, if you see something, say something. But recently, I met with a mentor that had added something to, if you see something, say something. He says, if you see something, say something, then do something. So let me give you the story of how Asal Support Initiative started. When I was in ABU, there was a campaign I was part of called the Arewa Me Too. It was a popular Me Too movement that we tried to contextualize to northern Nigeria. And here we were, young girls from northern Nigeria, speaking against sexual violence. And at that time, it wasn't a topic people wanted to hear. People really did not even want to understand what we meant when we talk about sexual violence, because there's a culture of shame and silence that we understand that exists. However, I was in Maiduguri at the moment, and we started going to schools and communities. I led a team. And we started talking to people about the culture of shame and silence that we have that ensures that perpetrators continue to just go scot-free. And afterwards, there was a conversation around the VAP Act. Because remember, I was a law student, and I would often come back during school session and then go back during holidays. And I realized that our laws were just very deficient. And then when the conversation started around the VAP Act, we got together and we said, how could we pressure our state legislators to push for the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act? And then we had a standstill rally in different states in northern Nigeria. And that led to the passage of the VAP Act. It became a law in so many states. But fast forward to, having the law in place, to working around creating awareness and all of that, I had to go for my master's. And I think I never really sat down to think around starting an organization until when I was out with my friends, and we were out and, we're all having fun, and I needed to go pee. So I went to the restroom, and behind it was something. It was like a little note that says, are you on a date? Is it not going well? Go to the bartender and ask for Angela, and the police will come get you without a fuss. And I thought for it transported me back to when I was in ABU. And we were having a conversation, my friends and I were out, and then some people were sitting down. And one guy was talking about how he had taken a girl out on a date, and then I think the girl left or she stopped picking his calls, and he felt entitled. Whatever he felt entitled to, I did not wait to hear that part of the conversation. But it even got me thinking about victim blaming and how we look at people and how we say, oh, why were you even at this person's house? And that was the story with Ariwemi too, basically. People coming out to talk about sexual violence and then people coming out with rebuttals. You know, people coming out acting as defenders. You know, why were you at this person's house at this time? What were you wearing? And that was when I really sat down to think around sexual violence and the effect it has in our community. And there in London, I still transported back to Zaria, like I gave the story, but then it still transported me back to Maiduguri. And I remember one of those interventions that would go to a community. And a father said, but you tell us to send our daughters to school. And here you are talking about how sexual violence happens in school and it happens everywhere. Why should we send our daughters to school when, you know, they can easily be violated in school? And then that got me thinking about benevolent misogyny. And it got me thinking around how sexual violence intersects with almost every areas of our lives, especially as women. And how sexual violence can take you away from the public space if the public space is not made to, you know, resist the idea that people can just violate you and go scot-free. And it got me thinking around what can we do about it. So when I thought about the idea of, okay, so what that man said, well, you could say it's valid, but what is the solution to that? How can we ensure that our schools are free and safe so that girls can study and, you know, become whatever without having to be burdened with, oh, somebody might harass me or all of that? How can we ensure that students are able to graduate without the fear for sex for grades? And we started to work around the safe school curriculum, where we would go to schools, you know, and we would see how we can engage. But we also realized that that wasn't enough. So we realized that when we start Asal Support Initiative, we have to address this from multifaceted ways. First, through policy advocacy. And if you're here in Abuja, wherever you are, on Friday, please tune in to AIT from 10 to 12. We're having a citizen plenary where we'll be discussing women's representation and constitutional development in Nigeria. Secondly, we also talked about research. We talk about these issues, but then there is no cross-generational research around how we can solve these problems. Thirdly, we talked about curriculum development and, you know, so on and so forth, training and facilitation, and so on and so forth. So, Asal Support Initiative basically started with me seeing something, and then I was saying something. For those that have followed me on Twitter, you know I was saying a lot of somethings. But then Asal Initiative was the manifestation of actually doing something. So never forget, if you see something, say something, then do something. I know you've heard this so many times. Never be ashamed to start small. Whenever people come to me and they say, oh, I want to do what you're doing, I want to, you know, be impactful, I want to do this, I want to do that, there's always a grandeur idea in their heads as to what this really means. But we often forget that when it comes to being a social entrepreneur, when it comes to activism, it's not fancy. These are real issues and these are real people. So when we say, oh, we've impacted 1,000 people, that's just data. But it is 1,000 human beings. And to impact 1,000 human beings, you yourself, you will run mad. I'm not going to lie to you. You will run mad. It will change you. So at the very core of it is that you should never be afraid to start small. When we were volunteering in Maiduguri and we were going to schools and we were having to pack whatever pocket money we had, we never thought that when we started, you know, UNFPA would give us a grant to go and do the same thing in different communities. When I was doing writing competition in schools, you know, I would go to schools and I would ask children to write because I've been mentioning Maiduguri a lot, and you would know that we have been impacted by the worst human calamity known to man. We moved from insurgency to flooding to so many things. And I would go back home and I would see that kids were not even expressing themselves. And that was when the idea of a writing competition came. And oh, my poor mother. I made her bake, I made her do a lot of things just to ensure that I was able to give the students when I go to the schools. And I would go to these schools and I would ask them to just write. And kids were writing about AK-47. Kids were writing about traumatizing events. And I was like, we must give children a voice through art. And that was where that started. Perhaps if I had never done that, we would not have gotten the French support to do what we call the Activism for Change last year, where we gave artists the opportunity to come use their voice to speak against sexual violence. And so many people ask me, so how did you become the Special Assistant on Sustainable Development Goals to His Excellency Atiku Abubakar? I got that question a lot. And the answer is simple. I just made a poem and I posted it on Twitter. And it took a year plus, and he saw it and he said, I wanted to connect with this person. So basically, never ever be ashamed to start small. What I'm about to say, perhaps some people will not like it, but I will say it anyways. Accept that school is not a scam. It's not is. It never has been designed to be. Because the power of education cannot be understated. I talked about stakeholders of my life. Many of these stakeholders, I met them through my educational pursuits. I met some of the stakeholders of my life who are heads of companies in Qatar. These are women that I would not have met if I was not at Said Business School in Oxford. I had met people even when we went to NIMET to do a training and facilitation for them, it was because I met the person that was heading NIMET through the course I went to in NIPS. So education is a great place for networking and so on and so forth. And just to debunk the whole idea that school is a scam, let me bust your bubble. You know the Mark Zuckerberg that we're always referring to when we say school is a scam? Well, he dropped out. Yes, he dropped out of Harvard. But what the part of the story that is not complete is, Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of Harvard, but Harvard was the first market for Facebook. When Facebook started, it wasn't open for everyone. It was just for Harvard students. Then it became for other institutions like Harvard before it became for everybody. So if he had not gone to Harvard, perhaps he would not have had a market for his first business. Lastly, I'm going to read this. Never forget who you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like an armor, and it can never be used to hurt you. This is a quote from my favorite TV character, Tyrion Lannister. I know I have spoken, but whenever people meet me and they ask me, so what do you do? I have the biggest anxiety of my life because I start to wonder, should I tell them I'm a lawyer? Am I a poet? Am I a businesswoman? What am I? And society wants you to pick a place and they want you to pick a label so that they can box you there forever. Then I found the term social entrepreneur. And it's simply an approach to cultural issues, environmental issues, social issues, just finding solutions to these problems. And it also got me thinking that we do not live a one single life. Our lives is not one single story. We are a accumulation of so many stories. So for me, because I don't live a one single life, and I do not exist to become a one single story, I think I'm allowed to be everything and to do everything as long as my strength and God permits. Thank you very much.